Today, we are delighted to explore a fascinating topic, making the invisible visible, intersection of science, art, and consciousness. There is so much around us that we cannot see with our eyes. Science allows us to see deeper into the world, from cells and neural networks to the intricate processes of life. At the same time, thoughts, emotions, intuition, creativity, and consciousness remain much harder to see, measure, or fully explain. And this arises some fascinating questions. Can art help us see what science is discovering? Can science help us understand what artists intuitively perceive? And what can we discover when science, art, and consciousness come together? We are fortunate to have Guhapriya Ranganathan with us today, whose work brings together these fascinating worlds of art, science, and human experience. Her background spans engineering, management, and fine arts, and she has collaborated with the scientists at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard to translate complex ideas in biology, genetics, and neuroscience into visual art. Before we begin, let me introduce our panelists. We have Mr. Ravi Potarlanka, telecom and media executive and entrepreneur, investor, non-profit, board leader, and conservation enthusiast with over 30 years of experience. Ravi holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and also holds master's and bachelor's degree in engineering.
Glad to be on the webinar. Thanks, Shivram, for the introduction. Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. Then we have Dr. Gauri Ralan, a PhD in metaphysical sciences, is a holistic healer, educator, and founder of Wellbeing Aeons Research Center in India.
Happy to be here on this webinar. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Gauri. We have sitting next to Gauri, Sandeep Ralan. He's a technology leader with over 30 years of experience in the semiconductor and networking industry, a dedicated social service volunteer for more than 40 years. He actively supports the mission of education for all.
Thank you, Shivram, and so excited to be here with Guhapriya presenting. This will be really exciting. We look forward. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Sandeep and Gauri. And we have Raji Kaul, the co-founder and creative director of Intelligia, a digital product design and engineering firm with the focuses on AI.
Thanks, Shivram, for the introduction. Hi everyone, and let's deep dive into the world of art and science.
Thank you, Rajiv. And with that, Guhapriya, welcome to Education for All. We are delighted to have you with us, and we look forward to this fascinating conversation. Over to you.
Thank you, Shiv. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. Let me start by first thanking our panelists, Gauri, Rajiv, Ravi, and Sandeep. When Gauri and Sandeep invited me for an Education for All webinar and talked about a new institute being set up in Bangalore for medical sciences and research, I thought it would be a wonderful way to spend time with friends and share my work and experiences. I'm a multidisciplinary artist working at the intersection of art and science, mapping memories and movement. I'm interested in process, patterns, and structures, studying how they transform and evolve. I work on independent projects and interdisciplinary collaborative projects with biomedical researchers and neurobiologists. For the webinar today, we will focus on a couple of collaborative projects. What's the agenda for today? First, I'll answer a few questions, starting with the main one about today's theme, making the invisible visible. Second, I'll address the meaning of consciousness. Next, what we mean by visualize, followed by how does an artist visualize? After that, I will focus on 3 examples of collaborative projects that I've worked on. And finally, the takeaway. We will then have the Q&A with both the panelists and audience members. What does making the invisible visible mean? It's a core concept used in art, science, activism, and design to reveal hidden, abstract, complex, or overlooked realities. As an artist, I visualize to make visible and contribute to collaboration projects. We know what science and art mean, but what does consciousness mean? The word consciousness in Latin means knowing or aware, and comes from two words that mean know and together. Originally, it referred to shared knowledge. Nowadays, we understand it differently, as a state of being awake, aware of one's surroundings, and having subjective experiences. It is the brain's capacity to combine vast streams of sensory data, memories, and emotions into a single unified continuous moment of experience. So what does visualize mean? To visualize means to form a mental picture in your head or to make something visible so that you can see it with your own eyes. How does an artist do that? In 4 different ways. 1, work closely with science and nature to reveal unseen natural phenomena like the moving and folding genome or gravity or air currents. 2, give form to abstract concepts like time, math, philosophy, or spiritual belief. 3, transform intangible internal experiences like emotions, memories, trauma, and neurodivergence into concrete visual form. 4, bring marginalized communities, hidden labor, and systemic injustices into public consciousness. Today, we are going to see 3 collaborative projects that I've worked on as examples that cover these 4 different ways. What are the 3 projects? The first project focuses on a complex, hidden, and abstract problem. It's a project on genome folding and started as a collaboration project with Erez Lieberman Aiden as part of the Broad Artist in Residence program from 2009 to 11 and resulted in an art science paper in 2021. The next 2 examples are sub-projects of a social media project that follows from a project with the Stanley Center for Psychiatric Research at the Broad Institute. It started as a request for help with the 10-year anniversary mural project in 2016, addressing a complex problem of sharing information. It evolved to become a commissioned permanent installation in 2018. The 2 examples of the overlooked are Instagram art science projects from 2023 with Stanley Center Broad, one with Anne Stevenson from the NeuroGap Psychosis Project, and another with Young Hoon Kim on DNA looping and schizophrenia. Let us start with the problem of genome folding and unfolding. How is it a complex, hidden, and abstract problem? The genome is too small to be seen by regular microscopes using normal light. They appear as blurry blobs. Scientists take measurements using super resolution microscopes to see the position of the glowing tags that they attach to the DNA. The software programs convert the data obtained to visualize the structure using mathematical models. This project involves fractal curves, an abstract mathematical concept, to work on a complex process within the field of biology, how the hidden genome folds and unfolds. In 2009, when I was chosen to be the artist in residence at the Broad Institute, they asked me 2 questions. Can I, as an artist, directly influence or change the direction of a particular scientific research project? And can I bridge the communication gap between the scientists and researchers in the lab and the public? Over the next 2 years, as artist in residence, I worked intensively with Aiden on this project to answer both these questions. Erez had just successfully published a paper with Van Berkom in 2009, in which they had deciphered a way for determining the 3D genome structure. He explained to me his hypothesis of the fractal globule model using ramen noodles. That first week, I had a lot of ramen. In our very first meeting, he explained how a 2-meter long thread can pack itself into a small space within the cell like a tiny dot. Erez also introduced me to the concept of space-filling curves, especially focusing on the Hilbert curve, the green ones on top, and the piano curve, the colorful ones below. Aiden and his team had created 3D models using software programs to show how the one-dimensional line becomes the Hilbert and piano curves. He shared how the line could fractally fold in 2 and 3 dimensions to fit more of the line into the same space. You can see the idealized curves reiterating the fractal pattern plotted with fixed intervals. To understand the curves better, we started by doing drawings together while discussing the contents of his paper. Erez talked and explained about 3C and high C, chromatin loops and domains, and their efforts to understand how the human genome, the DNA found in every cell of our body, folds in 3D. In one of our very early meetings, I instinctively handed Erez some electrical wire from my toolbox. Can you make me a model of the Hilbert or piano curve? Over the next few weeks, we played with wire, trying to fold them to create physical models for the ideal three-dimensional Hilbert and piano curves. While Erez was always focused on folding the wire, I was always focused on unfolding it. Over months, the wire forms continued to intrigue me. I knew there was something interesting about them that I was missing. How could I contribute? Through my artworks, I decided to explore the concept of unfolding. As life unfolds, as the genome continuously moves and unfolds to interact and give instructions, and as scientific discovery unfolds at the broad. I started printing wooden blocks burned with my soldering iron from the drawings created during our discussions. I printed multiples to see for myself what I would learn and figure out by combining them in different ways. You can see that I'm slowly loosening the rules and parameters of these ideal curves. My aha moment came while on holiday in the summer of 2010, when I visited the Thousand Pillar Hall with Shivalinga sculptures in a temple in South India from 600 CE. The pillars look similar from a distance. When one comes up close, one notices the differences and the different combinations of patterning. Also, though each of the Shivalinga sculptures, the sculptures seen between the pillars, have different sizes and proportions, they represent the same and are recognizable as the same, the still form of the formless. I was aware that the dancing Shiva, performing the cosmic dance in human form, and the Shivalinga sculpture on the left approach the same truth. Could the abstract genomic line, existing in Erez's software program, not have the same relationship with the physical wire models I was working with? If so, I could imagine and see an abstract, invisible genomic line in a continuous dance, a line with its own intelligence and memory, continually moving through the cell while folding and unfolding sections to interact and give instructions to operate the machinery of the cell, and knowing when, where, and how to fold and unfold. It would still obey the rules for a tangle-free genomic model. I decided to focus on one 3D curve with 7 segments, which you see on the top left. Once in the studio, I quickly manipulated the wire to sketch drawings on 120 post-it notes as stills to capture the dance as it unfolds. You can see the final installation on the right. Soon, Erez came back with this. He had redrawn by choosing random intervals to plot the piano curve in place of the fixed intervals to see what would happen. This small change made the zigzag version more closely resemble a physical trajectory of a real-life object like the wire or the folding genome while obeying the rules. And such a curve would be a superior model of the folded genome as compared to what we had used before. He included the construction details for this in his 2010 dissertation. For the residency show, I created a site-specific wire sculpture under the broad lobby stairs made of 18 coils for passers-by to manipulate. It became a physical object which the scientists and researchers and visitors were encouraged to push, pull, stretch, and deform. I also created large 60-inch by 60-inch paintings with different levels of layering. Though they were beautiful paintings, they did not add to our information. Based on my experiments with the wire sculpture and my imagined scenarios for the genomic structure, in place of asking, what is this and where is this going, I created mixed media drawings with what ifs, maybes, and why nots to explain the loops, twists, and warps. I used collage samples of prints I had created earlier and extended them as drawings on paper. They were a manifestation of the possible. I shared them with Erez. Over the 2 years, we had reached a very comfortable place with a collaborative creative process, where I drew my artworks while discussing the project with Erez. Drawing while discussing became a way of seeing together. Towards the end of my residency, I continued my experiment of extending drawings from collaged woodblock samples to reflect on what Erez and I had achieved on this project. What we had been doing on a journey together was to see and follow the invisible together, so we may make the invisible visible. I also decided to experiment and create a looping animation video for Brood from the stills I had drawn. I collaborated with Lars Erik Seren and the Broad Communications team. We combined soundtracks of wind and percussion instruments that follow the map migratory routes of the Genographic Project from IBM 2011 and used the lines drawn with Aidan on the problem of genome folding to narrate an abstract story of human DNA, migration, evolution, research, and understanding. The Broad Institute made the video available on YouTube. We made joint presentations. You can see Erez on the left, me in the middle, and Todd Gollop, the current director and the director of the Artist in Residence program at Broad in the image. And I shared my residency portfolio through 2012 as an exhibit across 4 buildings. Erez borrowed a coil from my sculpture and the digital images of my mixed media drawings. We went our separate ways and continued with our individual work. From 2015, I saw my mixed media drawings appear as part of the Aidan Lab Media Kit for published papers and in articles about the first 3D genome surgery, and as interpretations of DNA superloops. I hypothesized from Aidan and the Aidan Lab from after my residency, along with references to the 3D genome engineering. In 2021, we managed to connect thanks to COVID. Erez shared these papers with me and explained what had happened. Erez talked about chromatin looping. They think that the looping is a way to place certain genes close to one another. In the XX chromosome, they had unexpectedly encountered in the Bayer body the inactive X chromosome, multiple superloops of chromatin. They found the presence of a DNA sequence, DXZ4, that anchored these superloops. By deleting the DXZ4, the superloops collapsed. They could effectively engineer or interfere. To not just perform linear surgery, they could effectively perform surgery to alter or affect the 3D structure of the genome. The 3D structure that would determine if a gene could function, that is, be expressed and activated. These mixed media drawings became important because, according to Erez, unlike a scientific diagram, the images are not didactic. They present possibilities without enforcing a single rigid interpretation. In this respect, they are more true to our understanding than any diagram that is presently possible. The artistic process had become an essential part of scientific reasoning. Our process of seeing together led us to raise questions and reveal possibilities that we had not envisioned. The lab could address problems of genome folding, finding how DNAs loop, how misfolding problems can cause diseases like cancer and disorders like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and the 3D surgical solution that enables us to disrupt or restore loops. In 2021, I co-authored a peer-reviewed paper with the Aidan Lab and Erez Lieberman Aidan for the A2RU, Alliance for the Arts in Research Universities, for the Groundworks Journal and platform, which chose our Unfolding the Genome project as an exemplar for arts-inclusive research projects. We reflected on how our arts integrative approach advanced our understanding of both the 3D genome structure and how the genome folds and unfolds. For examples of the overlooked projects, let me give the background. Let us start by focusing on a completely different type of project, a complex one, my 2016 to 18 collaboration with the Stanley Center for Psychiatric Research at the Broad Institute, titled Cultured Interactions, Evolving Landscape, to design a mural for their 10-year anniversary. It is about visual communication. How do we see, share, and process information across different projects, labs, groups, and organizations with visitors? I printed and sampled woodblock prints, collaged them, and extended them to create these artworks. For the installation, we printed digital decals from these 360 plus hand-drawn artworks. We also digitally manipulated and transformed some of them to create 120 additional artworks. The 10 feet by 70 feet mural from one shared social space to another along their main corridor combined images from me about shared memories, text from Stanley chronicling their achievements, along with Stanley photographs, memes, and jokes. After a year-long process involving how scientists and visitors see it at Broad and at other locations, they commissioned a permanent installation. They chose the neurons they wanted the installation to resemble: pyramidal and chandelier neurons. The first is excitatory and the second inhibitory. They shared lab images and information and participated from feedbacks on drafts to detailed discussions. I added more images, both hand-drawn and digitally manipulated, to a collection of 480 plus images. We installed them, now around 650 in all, with no text, with help over 3 days along 2 long wall panels, a 10-foot by 56-foot corridor outside the Macasco lab, a lab that focuses on nervous system biology through innovative genomics. We found that many viewers immediately changed their scanned daily selection of 11 to 12 images, some even replacing one of their 2 key images with a new one. Some even remarked about how they now found the new images more interesting. This is how we see, process, synthesize, and share. This is how we continuously seek to learn and evolve. With more than 650 artworks, it is a continuously growing collection. It is the cultured and shared journey that we had not envisioned. 5 years after the mural at Stanley, we experimented with an Instagram art science project, highlighting 12 different efforts by scientists and researchers and their work in order to inform and reach viewers in their own safe personal spaces. Conversations on the evolving landscape. We started by asking scientists to choose one image from the mural and describe how they connected with them. Then, over the next couple of months, they shared their work, so I could create posts, stories, and reels that Broad and I could share both internally and externally. I'll share 2 examples today. The first with Anne Stevenson from the NeuroGap Psychosis Project. Let us understand the context. Traditional medicine uses a standard one-size-fits-all approach based on population averages to treat large groups of patients. In contrast, the future precision medicine customizes healthcare by tailoring disease prevention and treatment to each person's unique genetic, molecular, environmental, and lifestyle profile. The challenge? 78% of the DNA data in existing databases comes from people of European ancestries, who make up only about 16% of the world's population. What's the search? Looking for patterns given the genomic variations. The first step to a solution? Diversify the populations in our databases, starting with Africa. And like the entire form and color of the mural. As Anne explained, like the abundant and interconnected flora and fauna on the ocean floor, it takes more than 100 people at all different levels, including principal investigators, research assistants, grant managers, lab technicians, and willing participants to make a project like NeuroGap run successfully. This study is based on collaborations across 5 countries and 8+ institutions and aims to diversify psychiatric genetic databases. Teams in Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, and Uganda have recruited 43,000 participants to answer questions and donate saliva for DNA with the goal of better understanding the genetics behind schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Anne wanted red because it is present in all 5 flags of the countries we work with. Additionally, I like the idea of color scheme, she said, from the whole spectrum of different skin tones to reflect their ethnic, racial, or geographic range of people we are trying to include in our studies and the diversity of that. I called it color correction. Where do we come from? Where are we going? I designed banners to highlight the problem, share the efforts and the goal. Inspired by this communal effort to correct the course and make it culturally contextual, I researched traditional textile patterns and colors from these 5 countries: Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, Uganda, and the USA, to create an installation of these 5 mixed media artworks, to create a narrative over different landscapes and cultures. We shared it both on Instagram and with the project's sung and unsung heroes. For a final example, we will focus on my work with Young Hoon Kim. As Young stated, I chose this artwork because I felt that these strings made out of dots represented our genome in action. While the vast majority of a genome sequence is identical, we have common genetic variation that is responsible for a phenotypic variation. These common non-coding variants are thought to impart biological differences by altering expression of nearby genes through DNA loops in three-dimensional space, as depicted here. As a psychiatry resident trained in genetics, I'm working to identify elusive target genes of common genetic variants associated with bipolar and schizophrenia through the lens of 3D genome architecture. After chatting with Young about his work focusing on DNA loop structure, proximity, genetic expression, and schizophrenia, I wondered, how do I comprehend this experience? And more importantly, how do I communicate this effectively through a simple 1 minute long visual experience? John Clare's I Am, a sonnet and a variation, a poem, gave me a brief glimpse. I brooded over the blues of this feeling of alienation that the poet felt. I revisited drawings from one of my independent projects, Liminal Meanderings, to explore looking at and comparing the loops on our genomic lines. I created a series of 3 experimental abstract and yet narrative videos with sound, each a minute long. These videos focus on the alienation and reflect on the distortions of reality as experience. So they are meant to be slightly off and disturbing. So bear with me. I'm playing the first one. This is the first video, Knock Knock. Gene corrupted.
Environment on sound.
Are you there?
I am. Are you there?
I am. Now for the second one. It's called Skating on Thin Ice. And finally, the third, going off track. What made the ripples on these lines in a blue in between space and time reveal what and how we see, perceive, express, behave, and remember? How may they distort? So some of us live with delusions, hallucinations, disorders in thought and movement, and negative and cognitive symptoms. What is reality? What is self? The projects and the journey I shared today could not have happened without the help of all the people and institutions involved, including my family and friends and loved ones, peers, teachers, mentors, and viewers. Who we are is written in the intricate dance between the microscopic and the conscious. We learn and grow by seeing and knowing together. We open our minds to the idea beyond seeing ourselves as separate individuals focused on what we can individually achieve, to seeing ourselves as part of a whole, so we may contribute. It involves pooling our resources, working with open eyes and minds with the same objective: why, where, and how are we going with our efforts to provide personalized healthcare for all, giving due consideration to their genetic landscape, family history, environment, and lifestyle, using new technologies and new approaches. And whenever and wherever we find new solutions, we ask even deeper questions about what it means to be human.
Yeah,
Gauri?
thank you. Thank you, Gopi.
Yeah.
Thank you for that fascinating and thought-provoking presentation. I think
Thank
what makes today's conversation so interesting is that science, art, and consciousness may approach the same reality from very different directions. Science seeks to observe, measure, and explain. Art allows us to experience, interpret, and perhaps see things in ways that are not always easily expressed through words and or numbers.
Yeah.
And consciousness is the space through which we experience the world in the first place. You have certainly given us a lot to think about, and I'm sure our audience has many questions. So feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to go through one by one. So let's now open it up for question and answer. And first, we'll start with the panelists while the audience are still writing and thinking about the questions. And now, first, let me start with our panelist, Dr. Gauri Ralan. Over to you, Gauri.
Yeah. Guppy, you began with an engineering mind and gradually entered the world of art and for deeper exploration. What did you begin to see that conventional thinking could not explain?
Okay. Thank you for asking this question, Gauri. When I started, even as a child, I always remember that I was always drawing. I don't remember a time when I did not draw. I was the sort of kid who in the gardens would reach out with a stick and draw in the sand or on the ground. I would be the one always filling up my notebooks and textbooks with doodles on the side. I got into a lot of trouble doing portraits of my teachers and schoolmates. That practice continued from the beginning till the end. So that's the only way I have seen. There's not been a way that has been different for me. So I don't see it as different. But yes, I do see that when I was doing engineering, we had these courses on engineering drawing, which are very strict. And I think that was one of the courses that I hated most because it made me stick to rules. And I like to just ease up the rules. And you can see that just from my protest by doing doodles on notebooks and textbooks. So it's just the nature of who I am, so that's what I see. Yeah.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah.
If you had to give our audience one small experiment or observation they could try today to experience the kind of connection you explore, what would it be?
Let me think about it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can go with this one, which is simpler, I think, which is like we talk about the genome, right? And we talk about the CGAT sequence. For genomic sequencing, in order to see it very easily, to make it visually clear for even the scientists, we color code it. Like, for example, 4 basic colors: red, yellow, blue, and green for each of the C, G, A, and T. So then when they're combined in a long string, they sort of give you the whole sequence of the entirety of the genome, which is almost 2 meters long, right? We talked about that. So I'm talking about 4 colors, right? And so as artists, what we can do is either add colors, or if we have some other pursuit that we have, say maybe music, then we can choose 4 notes. Or if you're a sports person, or if you're a physically active person, you can take something else, which is 4 in measure, maybe movements, 4 different movements. If you're a dancer, or if you play tennis, then different strokes that you use, and try and repeat it in different permutations, because then you will realize how large this activity is, and this happens in every cell. And imagine that it's going 24/7, and this is this beautiful synchronization or symphony that goes on that makes us all alive. Does that explain it?
Of course, absolutely. Guppy, your journey beautifully demonstrate that what happens when we discover our Swadharma, that inner calling which makes our work a source of joy rather than exhaustion. Imagine if our children getting both science and creative learning and a multi-dimensional approach to learning, and which can make them align to their Swadharma early enough to build meaningful, life and transform their natural gift into work they will truly love. Now, I think I'll give it to Brother Shivram so he can just show us what we are doing at our schools.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Gauri. That's a wonderful question. And in fact, it gives me an opportunity to briefly share something that's very close to the heart of education for all. We have spent much of today's conversation talking about seeing what is not immediately visible. And also, you put a very good question about Swadharma. Looking beyond the surface and recognizing possibility that may otherwise go unnoticed. I think there is a beautiful parallel when we think about children. Every child has enormous potential, but that potential is not always visible, particularly when a child grows up without access to proper education, nutrition, and healthcare or a supportive environment. So, in many ways, education is about making that invisible potential visible. So that is at the heart of the cause that Education for All supports. Our belief is that every child deserves the opportunity to learn, grow, and realize their full potential, regardless of where they are born or their circumstances. Rather than talk about it at length, I would like to share a short video that gives you a glimpse of the work and, more importantly, the children whose lives are being touched by it. So I'll share a short video that you all will love. Actually, we have many videos to share, but I'll share one of this video that gives a glimpse of some of the activities that is being done in our headquarters in Muddenelli and around. Of course, we are worldwide. We are in over 100 countries as One World on Family mission. Let me share this video.
There are places the world speaks about, and then there are places the world's visionaries quietly seek. From heads of state to maestros and industry captains to icons of sport and culture, they have all walked these pathways. And they all ask the same question: what exactly is happening here? To answer that, we must begin where each new day begins. Where life flows with innocence and heritage moves with purpose. This place does not claim greatness. It simply reveals it. It is a living blueprint for a more conscious world.
I joined this Veda Pathashala as a child to learn this sacred path and to help carry his mission forward.
In healthcare, precision meets compassion.
The reason I joined here is because every day begins with a lot of excitement and closes with huge sense of contentment.
Every test, every surgery, every meal carries a cost, but not a burden. Because here, care depends on the value of a life, not the wealth around it. In education, transformation begins with values, where culture is breathed in and excellence is breathed out. Education here shapes leaders from the inside out.
This institution is like family to me.
My devotional journey in music was strengthened at this university.
child to learn, the body must be nourished. Sashur restores strength and dignity. In sports, excellence meets integrity, preparing champions built on character, where legends inspire and children rise. And beyond the mission lies beauty that stills the mind, a sanctuary of quiet reflection. Why do presidents, CEOs, cultural icons, and sports legends come here? Not for photographs, not for headlines, but because something here awakens the part of us that is still truly human. In a world divided by boundaries, here is a place that lives one truth. We are one world, one family.
Thank you for watching this video. Hope it gives a glimpse of what the mission is all about. This not all actually. We talk about our mission on World on Family. It is maybe more than a day to finish. But I'll quickly give some of the initiatives as part of the Education for All. That is part of One World on Family mission that is being done. As you can see, there's one school we have about 26 school campuses in India and two campuses outside India currently. There is one in Nigeria and one in Sri Lanka, and we have about 14 hospitals worldwide. Now, Education for All mission, part of One World, One Family, focuses more on the education. That's why I'll just touch more on education aspect of it. As you can see, there's one school coming up in Tenkasi in Tamil Nadu, and that is new school coming up, and these are the schools, Tumkur and Doddaballapur, that is being supported by some of us. And then there is a initiative that is happening here in Clarksdale, Mississippi, USA, that is after school program that is in Clarksdale. And then we also have one school in Nigeria, as I mentioned, also a hospital in Nigeria, and we have youth program that's happening in Malawi. And this if you click any of these links, then you can participate in whatever the way you want. And also, as you can see here, these are some of the glimpses of some of our campuses in India. And then also we have a medical college in Muddenhalli in our headquarters that is also providing education free of cost. That includes medical college as well as nursing students. And all our establishments, be it healthcare, nutrition, or education, everything is provided at no cost to the beneficiary. So if you go here, then you can see all the possibilities and opportunities to participate. And also we have Annapurna that is providing 10 million breakfast for 10 million students every day in the morning. It gives more details if you go to this page here. And also one more thing I would like to mention that what are the contributions you do here, you can do it worldwide. Like for instance, if you go to contribute page here, it gives the complete picture of different various initiatives that you can participate in. Like I sponsor a child, and you can sponsor a child for $100 per month. That will cover the complete expenditure of a child. And you can support build a school, and you can participate in the medical teaching hospital where you can support a facility, as I just went to that page. And then if you go to this contribute button, for instance, you can actually contribute from anywhere in the world to participate in this one. But more than that, be part of our mission. There are many ways you can participate, or at least pray for these children. These children are part of the world and part of the one family. Think that way, and in your own way, if you want to support in your own village, support that way. Any ways. It doesn't matter. You have to participate and support in this organization in however the way you want to support. it is the whole world. If one person thinks about the another person, this world will transform. So with that, now we will move on to our next question by panelist. Ravi, over to you.
Thanks, Shivram. First thing, Gopi, that was a really nice presentation, and it's such a delight to see you in this new form after so many years. So the thing that I wanted to ask you about is, in one of your slides in the beginning, you talked about visualizing different things. You talked about nature, you talked about abstract concepts, experiences, and communities and people. So, and you worked on a few of these, right? When you think about each of those things, and maybe there's more, are there some that are more difficult to visualize than others, or is that is that not even the right question? And I'm just wondering, because they all seem different things, and are there some of them that are easier to visualize, and some of them maybe perhaps more difficult? I'd just like to get your thoughts. Yeah, I'm just wondering about that.
Great question, Ravi, because the actual fact of the matter is, when I started doing this, it was for an independent project. It was a personal project, because artists always say art is about the artists themselves, the world around them, or the history of art. These are the three things that, or it is about life and death, which all, of course, encompasses everything, right? All these three. But this is what I start with. So when I started, it was because of my own personal interest in both brain cells and the neuronal aspect of it. And I don't know whether I can share, but let me see if I can share again my video, and we can go back to maybe I have a slide here in my master slide show. So let me see. Are you able to see the slides again? Yeah? Just comment. Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to start from here, because this is the first question that I always ask myself, no matter what the project, whether it's a personal project or a collaboration project working on something else. You understand what I mean? Like, basically, when I ask that question, that interest for me comes from two things. One, my mom, who was a paraplegic for 20 years before she passed away. And then I had spent, just before graduate school, time with my grandmother, who had sort of like loss of memory, suffered from that. And so we did not know whether it was dementia or Alzheimer's. And there was no easy way of finding information, because it was pre-web days, so it was not easy to just Google and then find the answers for it. So when I started doing research on it, and I just started the graduate program, so my question, wanting to just jump into it, was, how do I capture this thing which somebody else is experiencing? I can see in my interactions with them that they have lost their memories, they have garbled memories, but how do I visualize it? Because memories is something, right? So it's sort of like, so it started because in my childhood, my grandmother had taken me for a lot of walks in my local temple as a toddler, to the temple, to the marketplace. And she would introduce me to things, and she would tell me, don't just look at the glitter of it, find out how they make it, why they make it, what do they do. So if we're going to goldsmiths and we saw something shiny and bright, she would take us back to the goldsmith and ask us to see the process of it, learn from it, because you're focusing on something technical as well as something craftsmanship and all of that. And also the interaction with how many people build this community together. That interest came to me from there. But then I realized that I did not think about how I stretch it for the entirety of the population. The moment I started talking about walks, if you see the image on the right, that is actually a sort of an image where a large map has been done resembling neural structures, but it's of walks that I've gone on with my grandmother, and she was a great traveler. So to the places that she had visited, she would come back and talk about it, Manasarovar or Rishikesh or some, national park in India or something like that. And she would talk to me about it and describe that you should do this in your lifetime at some point of time. And, those were all very inspiring to me. So I was able to, that first step was a stretch towards understanding my grandmother, where she came from. And so then I created sort of like images where I was combining the biological information and the sociological information, because one, she's a believer. So I took verses from the Bhagavad Gita, which deal with memory, and I sort of knit them together to have a loose sheaf book. So you can see the blocks that I have and the etchings that I have that combine together to tell this tale of a person who's going through a very difficult transition in their life, or the journey in their life. The next came, so the next experience was just after she passed away. So I also did other scientific work, but let me come to this slide. So where you have this print, which is installed now at Simmons College, or Simmons University. And so what you have is she had passed away. So the idea of what does it mean when we lose a person like that? What does it mean to me personally? And so when I think about it and when I look at it, I think of it as just we are all strings of memory. We are all like a connection. We knit together in a sort of web or a net, like a circus or whatever it is. We get from the top, we pass on and share with our peers, and we also learn from our peers as well, and we pass on to others in future generations. So this is all we are. If you look at it, it's the stretch of memory in some one way or consciousness. We just touch and go, links that we go. And what we lose when we lose a person is the wisdom of a person, whether it is actual death or if we let them slip through the nets, when we overlook who they are and what their potential is to contribute. So that's where I come from, so that's the sort of work. So when I did this, it was actually the first artist in residence at Broad who contacted me and asked me, like, can you come and then like discuss, because he wanted me to curate his thesis show or his residency show. And that led on to a discussion of where I said, I was not interested in that because I was just setting up my studio as an emerging artist, just like any other place, right? Any other field. When you're starting out, you want to focus on learning the craft, learning and setting up what it is that you do. But at the end of the discussion, it was a 3 or 4 hour long discussion. I asked him whether I could apply for the residency, given that I was just a fresh artist, whereas he was an established artist. He said, why don't I just forward your CV and your portfolio, send it to me? And so then I got into discussions with the Broad people. For over a year, they interviewed me 3 or 4 times, and they checked my portfolio as it was developing over the year. And that was the first time. And so when I got selected, that was the first time I realized I could actually talk with them and find out what it is that I could contribute to a larger subset or a larger population. Do you understand what I mean? And so I did not know. I learned on the job. So at each stage, it's always like stepping into a zone of discomfort or an uncomfortable zone, but it's a learning process. So that is why you see in the videos that I said, where it is like, I don't know what schizophrenia is. I have never personally known somebody with schizophrenia. I've known people with bipolar disorder, but so my reaction is, how do I understand it? And so the moment I try, it may not be the exact way of visualizing it, but I'm trying. It's my attempt to empathize and put myself in somebody else's shoes, right? That consciousness that we have, to see it not just as information in the lab, but to personalize it in a way, a person whom we are actually coming in contact with and who's going to affect our lives in some way, some measure or the other, so that we can include all. That is how it is. So every time I'm learning, every stage I'm learning, I still have to learn a lot more, but it's just one in a string of processes. Does that answer?
Yeah, no, that's good. It's really fascinating. It's a whole process, right? It just doesn't happen. So it's really neat. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ravi.
Thank you, Ravi. I think next we'll go to Rajiv.
Yeah, thanks, Shivram. I'll build up on Ravi's question, and I'm very keen on getting a glimpse of your day in your studio.
Okay.
And also, as Ravi asked, that are some of the subjects or ideas difficult to visualize than others? So if you could also give us an example of how you use a specific technique like wood burning into your paintings. So
Okay.
those
Yeah.
are my couple of questions.
Yeah. I can do that. Let me first start with the studio question.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah. This in terms of studio practice, I sort of learned it from my mentors, but I've also done it all through my life. I always draw. I always find a reason to at least sketch or draw. I even tell my students, when you're writing, you're actually drawing, because when we are in preschool or kindergarten, we don't write an A because we don't recognize it. We draw an A. So anyone can draw, anyone can express their creativity in whatever field they choose, right? So for me, because the drawing practice is essential to my happiness and sort of represents who I am as a person, I do it daily. Some days we get too busy with our teaching schedules or our collaboration meetings or something else that comes up, right? I still go into my studio and switch on the lights once, take a look at everything and switch off the lights. So it's sort of like, it's that sort of ritualistic thing that I do so that I keep in touch with that. It's just like normal to me. And I wouldn't have noticed it until somebody asked me about it. But because people ask me about it and then I say, yeah, this is what I noticed that I do. It's just like any other prayers for somebody else or exercise for someone else, right? Not that I don't exercise or pray, but it's just one of those other things that I do. It's sort of essential to my happiness. That's part of my studio practice. And in my studio practice, I have usually many projects, like at least one or two projects. One will be on the front burner and another on the back burner, and they'll go back and forth. Because when you're doing work like this and there's lots of information coming in and you're trying with new ideas to see how to make it effective and work. And the reason why we do not go completely representation, because it would be easy to pull up the images and show it, because what happens is that a person looking from the other side might not identify with the representation of a person from Africa or India or somebody. We want to keep it in an abstract manner so everybody can reach out and understand it, right? So that's one of the things that I have to learn as well. So I have to learn that aspect of it, that I have to press. But one thing that you can use is nature. So nature is something everybody comprehends. So in my family, we do a lot of gardening, and I was a gardener as a child because of my parents. So learn to garden. So I get a lot of natural images as well into it. So it's sort of like a parallel. I see it at 3 different distances. So I see what is inside a microscopic structure, then external space, like in astronomy or something like that. I layer these images, and at the same time, the landscapes that you see around. So I'm going to give you an example of a project over here. I think we went on to it. Let me see whether it is, sorry. Yeah, let me take a process like this, right? Let me go back, in fact, to one slide that we had done earlier. Just give me a moment, bear with me. I'm going back into the cultured interactions evolving landscape. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, can you see this image over here? Yeah, okay. So you see there are wooden blocks over here, right? These red wooden blocks over here, 2 wooden blocks, they're actually 15.5 inches by 6.5 inches or something.
Okay,
they're
so
very
they're
narrow
pretty
long.
big.
Yeah, these are very small, okay? But with them, I can print, right? I can, because I have burned into them with a soldering iron. Where does that come from? From the other slide that I shared with you earlier about my interest and how it started. Like, over here, this is when I actually discovered the process. Because when you make a mark like that, it looks like something biological, but the dot can also represent a person. The dot can also represent a thing. You understand? Just mathematically speaking, we know that, but even instinctively, we get it, all of us, that it can be a person who's making a connection, right? So it's sort of like transfers together, and you start doing it. And you will see that in my artworks, the titles are very important. Process is very important. So the titles will be evolution, transformation, burned and etched in a memory. So when memory became important, I started thinking of burning and etching as processes. Until then, I hadn't done those processes. So I learned those processes in order to convey and communicate and explore. More than convey and communicate, to explore for myself first, because the primary viewer or the first viewer is always me. If I am able to understand something, I always ask questions when I'm doing my artworks. So it's either, even on independent projects, what is it? Like I was asking with my grandmother, how do I visualize this? How do I see this? So mine is not just about beautiful imagery. That is dependent on who sees it, right? Whether they like it or not, but it's more important on whether I'm pressing. It's like fine research, like fine art is research in a way, visual research that you're doing based on your own questions and your own journey, and you're going on with that, so that's the way I do it. So the process becomes interesting. So in some cases, paintings may work, paintings may not work, print may work, you understand that. So when you come back to this, let me go back to that earlier image again, bear with me. Yeah. So when you have something like that, right? So what I'm doing here is like printing them, and then I'm going to go to another image. You see this left of it, you see 4 images, right? You can see some black parts of it, right? Black or darker parts on it, brown up parts, more the coloring here on top and the bottom. Those are actually prints that are torn up. So I'm sampling those prints, just like samples in a lab. You take a lab and then you nourish it, or rather you culture it in a tray, or in a petri dish or whatever it is, and then you start looking at them and studying them and conduct experiments with them. So I am actually mimicking a process very resembling what is happening in scientific research. You understand that? So
Yeah.
and in this, talking of nature again, the title is Cultured Interactions Evolving Landscape. The inspiration comes from a 12th century Siddhar poem.
Okay.
Okay. And he talks about the importance of physical health, right? He talks about a man in a garden who does not take care of his health and destroys it by frittering it away. But here, and so it is the importance of, like, you cannot create a good life without good physical health. He mentions that Siddhas were the ancient mystic sort of like medicine people in India. So they were the people whom we depended on before medicine developed to where we are now, right? And so, but they have this wisdom that they call us. So I was thinking about that, but my studio faces the garden. So when I was looking up, and my mother was telling me this poem, she was quoting this poem, from India, and she was saying you have to take care of your health, just as all moms do, right? And so it was just a natural instinct, and I looked at yeah, and I looked up and I said, a man in a garden, and I just transposed it, and I said, a garden in a man. And then when we say genomic landscape, then it makes sense to me. Do you understand? Because we are talking about a different type of landscape, but there is a whole world within us. There's a whole world within each. So at every level, there's a huge world that we don't know anything about and which we are trying to figure out. And so that's where the process comes in, in the sense of how the creative process. So it's not something at least I have to wait for it. It doesn't come immediately. Like, you can't ask me for an idea and I won't get it immediately. As you can see from the project, a project takes around 2 years to do, but then for it to verify and have an impact, it takes another 9 to 10 years or something like that. The whole process becomes like 12 years or 15 years. And so you will also see my projects go for a long time. I also make artworks that take a long time. Let me give you an example of that as well. I think I have it here. Yeah, I think this is the image. You would have seen this image in the slideshow earlier where I talked about following the invisible, which I had done. That has changed to become this artwork as part of Cultured Interactions in the Continuum series, which is another offshoot, which is based on information processing at the Broad. Because I had, when I did the Broad residency, it was not just Aiden's project that I worked on. I worked on 3 other projects as well. And I was introduced to other scientists who would talk to me about their projects. So there was a lot of information going into my head. It's like brainstorming. It's overload and you're really uncomfortable. But at the same time, you have journaled all these information. So it's your brain is much smarter than you think you are, consciously think you are. So it's sort of like interesting how it does its own stuff. And then after 2 or 3 years, it says, why don't you incorporate that layer into it or focus on that as a theme? So you realize that there are 6 canvases which are put together in this artwork, but 2 of them slipped away and only 4 of them remain. Because now only these 4 are relevant to me. Do you understand how they've transformed into something else? But it's the process that I journal and then I talk about and share with people, and people see it also. The scientists see it also as it moves from years to years. And so they realize what it is that I'm doing is sort of like resembling what they do. That scientific research that they do. It's an abstract process. It's an experimental process. You do not know whether there are answers. You do not know how to proceed, but you start from there and go from, bravely as much as you can, but you work together. That's it. I hope did I answer both questions?
Yes, the studio part was really fascinating.
Yeah.
How you cross-pollinate from literature, nature itself, and your own techniques. So
Yeah.
very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question,
Yeah.
Shivram? Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question posted by our good old friend Krishnan Balakrishnan. I believe he's in University of Maryland. So he has asked that please ask Guppy that what do you see AI helping or hurting your art process?
My art process, I think my art process is very old school as of now. The only things that I have experimented with or video, I mean, like in terms of like modern technology, and you can see also it's the fine art edge of it. So I'm always trying to incorporate the drawing practice, the actual hand, because for me, I believe that the human being is the most important. I will not say that AI will take away from it. I don't believe in that. What I think is we haven't yet maybe learned, because what we put in is what we get out of AI. So we have to be very conscious of what we do. This is what I'm talking about with medicine. It's the same with new technology. In fact, AI is being used in order to do medical research as well, right? So it is how we incorporate it. It is how we inform it, what we take out of it. As long as we are always thinking about what it means to be human. When I say human, it also includes being humane. It's like we forgive ourselves for our faults, but we always try to correct it so we know where we are headed in the future. So that's very important, I think. So that's where I would say, I hope that answers KBK's question.
Yeah. I hope he's
Old friend
listening.
of mine. Yeah.
I hope he's listening. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sandeep. We have some questions from the audience. Um, First question comes from Dr. Sunny from California. Many of the greatest artists and scientists were addicted to alcohol, drugs, and other things. What is the role of personal moral choices in curiosity, creativity, art, and science?
I think it depends on each individual and their individual makeup, right? Someone might say, I'm addicted to drawing. Someone, it all depends on what we think is a healthy lifestyle as well. At that time, I'm not sure whether, even though, and there was also a time when artists were seen as separate from the rest of the global population. Do you know what I mean? Like they were sort of crazy, mad, avant, whatever savant, whatever you call it, right? Like different type of person. But now I don't think it's like that. It is very much like it may be for some occasion, for some it's a profession. And so you find people, in fact, I say artists have to be in this day and age, some of the most professional people, because other fields like, medicine, engineering, or architecture, finance, right? They have a functional use. It is very difficult for people to use art think of art in a functional way. So many times, even when a client comes, they're always worried about artists and deadlines, about actually making use of the resources in a proper manner and all of that. But we have to be very conscious of that when we do it. So it's sort of like, it's how you integrate yourself and like put together what you think is important and what your morals are is each one's personal choice. I wouldn't want to like discuss that with them, but at the same time I know you have to be healthy, you have to have a proper lifestyle in order to even do art in this day and age, and you have to be able to work with people, because as time is proceeding along with individualized projects, many artists are collaborating with each other in order to create projects, in order that sense of community, because we have realized that we cannot do much without interneting or connecting with each other, how connecting with nature, all these things, all the problems that we face globally is something that people are addressing. So there's more activism in art these days. So that makes it even more conscious, people more conscious about how they lead their lives. That's how I would say. But greatness and morals are completely different things. So you can be a great artist and not a great person. It does not equate that a great artist has to be a great person or vice versa. You understand that there can be many great people who are not great artists, but they may have creative ways in which they express themselves, in other ways. So it's that. I hope that addresses Dr. Sunny Anand's question.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Gupi. Before I'm going to the next question, I think maybe few people have some issues with their chat. You can raise your hand and I'll open it up. I'll unmute you and you can ask the question directly. If you have any question, please raise your hand. I'll unmute you and you can ask the question, audience. While you're doing that, I'll go to the next question from the audience. That is from Jija Madhuri from India.
Yeah.
The question is, can you speak about pattern recognition, particularly while reading charts and graphs?
Okay. I am not a scientist. Okay. I'm an artist. I don't really read charts and graphs, but what I can do is using that same project, let me go back. Okay. Yeah. A chart like gives you different numbers. So one thing I do is whenever I create artworks for Broad, because it's a genomics institute, right? You will see me use these bright colors, especially 4 colors, right? For layering, because what I'm trying to do is give them a subliminal message that there's a genomic sequencing going on. You understand that? And also there is a positive, hopeful way in which we are looking at things. But coming back to this example where we had, let me go to the slide so we sort of refresh our memories and we see what it is that we were talking about. This project, right? It's got 650 images, right? It's a huge number of messages. like in artworks that we are creating. Those 4 artworks, those may be 4 artworks of this collection of 650. I just had those representative over there. So you can see that, right? And so when we are seeing, we are looking at things and asking, how do people remember? What do people remember? And that was part of the research. And that's where we were coming up with how they do it. Each one selects 1 or 2 key images and say, oh, I connect with it. And when I connect with it, why do I connect with it? And then there's a sequence, right? They say like, oh, I like this. So they actually, it's like a ritual for them. When they come in and cross the corridor, they go into it and look at the first one, and they go then into multiple images, right? And a sequence of 11 and 12 and see it. And I addressed it in the slideshow. So we sometimes play with the scientists. In fact, one of the research that we did was we played a spot the mutation game, right? In the spot the mutation game, what we did was we had 2 images which looked distinctively different, from the rest of them. So you can see those 2 on the right over here, the light blue one and the more purple one on the right, right? And so we asked them, without even pointing to these 2, out of the 650 images, which is the mutation? That is the variation that is distinctively different from the others. There were around 40 or 50 who picked the purple one. And most people, right? And I think most people over here might also say that the panelists can tell me and the audience can think for yourself which one you choose, which one, the purple or the blue one. And you can see for yourself that many people would choose the purple because it looks different. But the really different one is the one in the middle, right? This lighter blue one, because it does not have those woodblock prints in it. It is actually comes from a larger artwork, which I cut into different smaller sized artworks. And that's a story for another day, because that project, it will take another 25 slides. But you get the idea that it is the only one which is completely different. So it's sort of like we play those games in order to do research, because they're great visual thinkers and visual seers, scientists. But at the same time, as artists and visual and as scientists, every day we have to stretch our abilities to see more carefully. When we say see, we mean not only with the eyes, but also with our mind. So both of this have to be sort of like going together, working together in order for us to move forward. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Gupi. There's one more question from the audience, but I think you already answered the question. I'll just read it out. The question is from Jaya from India. Has art or literature influenced scientific discovery? I think this whole thing about the...
Oh, yeah. And I think I didn't, in terms of, let me just add one thing. When I say literature, I also have a lot of scientific literature that I have to read because of all the papers that comes to me. I do not understand much of it. So I have to go back and sit in discussions with scientists, or they make it very simple for me, like ramen noodles, or they have another process to explain to me. They find ways of making it palatable for me, and to break it up into portions in ways that I can understand, but I have to go through them. Most times, just like most scientists are, they want me not to go to the figures, because as an artist, I go to the figures in the published papers and say, let me make sense of the image. It's easier for me to understand an image. But for them as scientists, why don't you read through the research process first to understand it? So that becomes more important. So that's another literature that I didn't understand, but you have to be reading. You have to learn. And when I started this process, I did independent studies. So we did it on memory. So I did a lot of phenomenology studies. How do you do that? Before I started this process comes from the graduate program days, when I did a lot of critical art theory and memory readings, and from Heisenberg and Proust and all these different people who had different ideas, and then it just comes on today, where we are beginning to understand it in different ways, and so I'm just trying to brainstorm and put together something that's works for me, this layering of memory in different ways, because I'm not just an artist, I'm also an engineer, I'm also a mother, I'm also a teacher, I'm also a person, I'm still a child, there's a child living within me. So all of that comes together when I create my art. So it takes a lot of literature and a lot of looking at the world in order to learn.
Sure. Thank you, Gupi. There is a question from Krishnan Balakrishnan. I unmuted him. Krishnan, please go ahead and ask.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I'm sorry if there's too much noise. I'm on a bus, but
no, you're fine.
Beautiful presentation, Gupi.
Thank you.
Here's how I'm maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but let me ask this question anyway. Given this forum, Education for All, and given how this seems to be about empowering the next generation, have you thought about how this could be introduced much earlier on to children and allow them to see life and science through art?
Yeah. This is a great question, Krishnan, because this is something that we have been. In fact, when I talked about the A2RU Groundworks Journal, the reason why I mention it is because it's an alliance of more than 30 universities in the US, top universities, which come together, which sort of try to integrate it into the college program. I know we are talking about younger kids, but I think this is something that we need to incorporate into our regular educational system because we are talking about STEAM projects. When you introduce art, it's not just communication, but it sort of loosens the rules. It disrupts the system. It questions, right? The more it questions, the more it says, because I'm always talking about rules in the first project that I talked about and breaking the rules, obeying the rules, not obeying the rules, because that's important, because that's when we can take the creative leap. And we can also sort of connect to other human beings because science and math can sometimes become very abstract concepts somewhere out there in space and very difficult for us to comprehend. If I say 1 + 1 is 2, it may be difficult for someone to understand. But if I put one person, Gauri, and then Sandeep, another person together and say, how many people do you see? You say 2 people instinctively, right? So it's that natural realization. So all the projects which I used to hate, maybe at some point of time, the dioramas, the sort of singing a song about science, scientific principle or math, all of that, the sort of like musical rhythm with which we say things when we are learning, all of those things, right? Or movement, when we say like turn, right? Left turn, right turn. If we actually do it, right, then the person understands what we mean. Around. All of that, when we start expressing, using all that we have in our capabilities in order for children to understand, they will start incorporating it into the way of thinking and functioning immediately. I think that's what I believe. I hope that answers, Krishnan.
Totally. I mean, like ultimately it has this is about storytelling. And if something needs to be sticky, it has to come from something that you have absorbed before you can express it to other people. So
let's see if they will enable.
I think
Okay.
there's someone else.
Yeah, thank you, Krishnan, and
thank you,
thank you,
Krishnan.
Gopi.
Nice to meet you.
We noticed you have spoken, so
Okay,
we will
now
follow you.
the next question is from Guru Mahagaonkar. Yeah, go ahead, Guru.
How do you visualize the time in your artworks? Because we have Puranas in Markandeya or other things. How do you visualize time?
Okay, actually, that's fascinating that you asked me that. I'm going to show you first one image, and then I'll play a video, and then I'll sort of describe that. Does that help? Are you still able to see my images?
Okay, I'm able to see. Yeah.
Okay. Let me look at this image, right?
Yeah.
You might recognize these 2 images from the first slideshow from my project Unfolding the Genome, right?
Yeah.
Those are the mixed media drawings. But the wall around that has a lot of doodles of lines going through that, right? I'm not saying it would be about the Puranas, but it's also my cultural background because I grew up going to temples, as I said, with my grandmother and my grandfather. And also we were surrounded by temples from the Chola dynasty, from the Pallava dynasty and the Vijayanagara dynasty. So we had these bronzes, world-class bronzes. They are the sun. You can see the dancing Shiva there. So we didn't recognize it, but it sort of instinctively we absorbed it into our system. And we are talking about genomic architecture. This is actually an installation at the Broad for the 15th year anniversary that I created on site over 2 days. And so what I'm painting this is with turmeric and kumkum, slake lime, right? Adding to that holy ash, charcoal, because we burn lamps and we burn wood for our rituals. And so it brings back the smells and the sights, draws me to memories. And I ask, can you go from anywhere to anywhere? So it's more about understanding a concept of that question actually comes from an artist called Annie Albers from the Bauhaus movement. She said, you can go from anywhere to anywhere, where she's talking about whatever may be your origins, whatever the process you may use, if you delve into it deeply enough, you'll be able to find a way of connecting. Now I'm going to play the video as well and hope that it plays well. Just give me a minute. Yeah. All you'll be able to see here is heartbeats in this video, but you'll be seeing an installation that I created for the Simmons University Art Gallery Anteroom. An anteroom is a space that you can find in both gallery halls in universities, as well as in temples, churches, and mosques. because the temple is built on the proportions of the human body, right? And so it's the sort of symbolizes human life, and that's what is meant to. So I see my life or my body as a sacred space. So that's where the inspiration comes from. And I'm also using Annie Albert's question. Can you go from anywhere to anywhere? Actually, because my research is on the genome. So I'm connecting them both together, these squiggles over there called meanders, right? We have heard of the meandering river, how the river moves from one to the other. We know how sacred rivers are in India as well. So that becomes another layer of information that people can remember as well. These smells that they can smell from these ancient sort of coloring mediums, along with the modern smells of markers and graphics and what we are doing in the labs and in our research studios, is also something that sort of like draws you towards that. We are bringing that. And we're talking anteroom is the room before we go into either the Garbhagraha, that is where the gods are situated, or the main hall, right? It's in between space. So I'm talking about time and space in that way. So in this, if you see what is a meander, going from point A to point B, curving around and looping and going back. You can draw a straight line between point A and point B. But our life becomes so much more interesting. We traverse it so many times through these curves that we take. For a regular person, it may be a trip to a temple, it may be exercise, it may be playing music, it may be spending time with friends. But we have time for work, we have time for taking care of our own health, all of that, and sleep and eating, all of that in the right time, right? So we can measure it in terms of time. So in this video, what I have done essentially is like what you're seeing in those drawings is that I'm taking levels of time. So when I say levels of time, I'm taking like from maybe 7 days in a week, or 24 hours in a day, or 365 days in a year. Or when we say in 15 days, I'll do this. Every 15 days, I will go maybe to another destination or a holiday or a hike or something like that. All these are very important for us to grow ourselves and become healthy as well. So I think about it on those terms, and I think about learning as a sacred space. So the title is Transform, a study for liminal meanderings. So all these things inform me, and I see that you can see it from different perspectives, hopefully, that you can see it from math, the mathematical concept of meanders, the rivers that are meandering, the temple visits that I have gone to from childhood, and sort of like I remind them of things that we may remember from our own ancient past. And when I do that, I will go into the stream of consciousness, because the moment I enter the temple space, then I remember the stories my grandparents told me, right? Or from there to other Puranas, other ideas that I have in terms of values in life that I hold on to. Whatever it is that we sort of like immediately, it's something that happens very magically with memories. This is how we move through streams of consciousness. And I hope I sort of addressed the question, Guru. I don't know if I did, but I hope I answered.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Guru.
Yeah, thank you, Guru. I think we are getting close to the bottom of our hour. So next question will go to Gauri, and then we'll close the session.
Hi, Gupi.
Hi, Gauri.
What is something invisible in our world today that you believe humanity needs to learn to see?
Oh, let me process that again. Can you repeat it for me once?
Okay. What is something invisible in our world today
Okay.
that you believe humanity needs to learn to see?
Okay. I think one of the most important things that we do not recognize is that we are 2/3 water, right? When we've learned it in our scientific school, in science classes in school, right? From early elementary school, 2/3 water, 66.67%. It's not the same, but we say 2/3 water. And we know that water is necessary. Fluids are necessary in our body for movement from one part to the other, from the submicroscopic level within the cell, all the way up to cells and tissues and organs and everywhere. And then we find it in nature. I will say it is invisible because we do not pay importance to it. We overlook the importance of water. And so what happens is that we pollute our waters, saying they are sacred, but we do not give it the importance that it is essential, that people in an older generation actually knew and felt. It was very important and integral to their sustenance and their survival. And we sometimes take it for granted just because it gets processed and comes through us. And when it doesn't, then it comes up as the Flint episode, or it comes up as New Orleans or a flooding happens and the whole thing gets toxic and the environment gets toxic. So I think that's one thing. Anything in nature, the air, the water we breathe, the land that we go into, when we start of digging up things and like all the toxins are brought out, minerals are good, but at the same time, how do we safely do it? When we have set up industry, do we take care of the pollution standards? Because all those things, it's not just genomics, it's not fated, right? It's the lifestyle that we have, the environment that we live in, all of that becomes integral to our happiness and our health. It's not just enough for us to survive, we have to flourish, we have to improve our ways of defining how we are human. Yeah. I I hope that answers it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Gauri.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, we are blown over, Gupi. You're really, you're at a different level. I don't think we.
No. I am just like one of you. It's just that I've been working in a different field. That's all.
Yeah, no, I must say, as Gauri said, Swadharma. So you are an electronic engineer by degree profession, and now you became what? I think you are meant to be this. That was your Swadharma. That's what Gauri was saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a journey. I never knew where I'm going to reach next, you know. So it's just like I keep it open-minded. I had the opportunities. I was blessed to be in the right place. I had good parents who sort of like supported me. Of course, they gave me the academic background, you know, the stories that every parent gives, and it's important. I think it's an important one because if I didn't have that, it wouldn't open up to all these venues that I have. I may not practice engineering. I've not practiced it in more than 25 years, but it helps me. It informs my background. Like I can do math without fear of it. You know, when somebody gives me a problem, when somebody talks about engineering, I don't close my eyes. It opens my eyes. It also is talking about concrete things, whereas I'm talking about abstract things. But then I'm using the abstraction in order to understand something that is concrete in our lives, right? Which is the genome. We may not be able to see it, but it's actually happening and functioning in our lives. So those sorts of things, it sort of helps me make the connection. So I'm always proud to be an engineer. I'm proud to be an artist and a teacher. So it's every role that I have, I'm happy to do that, you know. So life has given me opportunities and I've just taken it. Lucky for me. That's it. Yeah.
Sure.
And hopefully continue to do so.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Gupi. As we come to the end of today's conversation, I think we have explored much more than just the intersection of science, art, and consciousness.
Yeah.
We have explored different ways of seeing, looking beyond what is immediately visible, asking questions, being curious, and recognizing possibilities that may not be obvious at first. Gupi, thank you for helping us look at the world through a different lens and for sharing your ideas and experience with us today. And thank you to our panelists for your thoughtful questions and to everyone who joined us and participated in the conversation and also the audience who asked the questions. I hope each of us leaves today with a little more curiosity, perhaps looking at the world and even at ourselves with a slightly different perspective. And perhaps there is also a connection to the cause we spoke about today. When we learn to see what is not immediately visible, we begin to see the potential in people and especially in children, potentially that deserves an opportunity to grow. If today's conversation has inspired you and you would like to learn more about the work of Education for All or support the cause, I invite you to visit educationforall.org. That is educationforall.org. You can learn more about our programs and find ways to participate or contribute. And if there are people in our audience who have a subject, an area of expertise, or a story that you feel would benefit our community, we would love to hear from you. If you are interested in conducting a similar webinar and sharing your knowledge and ideas with our audience, please reach out to us through the Education for All website, or you can write to us at info@educationforall.org. That is info@educationforall.org. We believe that every conversation has the potential to inspire someone, and we'd love to create that platform for you. Thank you all once again for being with us today. We hope to see you at our next Education for All program. Have a wonderful day, and thank you again, Gupi and panelists and everyone.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.